Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know that we have some people just trickling in right now. We're so excited to have you. We're going to give everyone a few moments to come in. As you're all entering today's webinar, if you want to hop into the chat and just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us about your business, or if you don't have your business yet, tell us a little bit about the type of business that you're looking to get into. And again, we're just going to give just a minute or two to let our participants come in before we get started. Thank you. If you are just joining us, we are just giving everyone a moment to come in before we get started. Feel free to hop into the chat and tell us a little bit about your business, introduce yourself. It's going to be, I'm excited. I'm actually personally very excited for this webinar, and I hope that all of you are as well. I think it's going to be a fun one, and we are just giving everyone just a few more moments to hop in. Fantastic. Love to see the activity in the chat. Keep it coming. Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much. We are going to get started. Please continue to introduce yourself in the chat as we're going. Welcome. My name is Rachel. I am the marketing and communications person here at the Small Business Development Center at Temple University. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start, grow, and succeed. We do this through our no-cost consulting and a variety of no-cost webinars and training programs like the one that you are attending today. You are joining us for Google Analytics 4, making some sense of GA4. We are recording today's session, and a copy of that recording and the PowerPoint will be sent to all of our attendees within a few days in a follow-up email. We have all of our attendees muted, but we encourage you to post any questions that you have in the Q&A. We will be saving all of our questions for the end of the presentation. We want to make sure that we're able to get all of that content over to you, but we will have some time at the end for question and answer. If you have any questions throughout, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A just so that you don't forget them, and we'll make sure that we get to them at the end. I'm now going to turn over the floor to our presenter, Zach.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I am Zach Duncan. So, all right, there's a picture of me. So I have a small consulting company that we focus on SEO and digital analytics. It's called Root and Branch Group. And I write and make a lot of videos about Google Analytics 4. This started for me about 2 years ago, partially because Google Analytics 4 was so confusing. I just started blogging and started making kind of instructional how-to videos so I wouldn't forget how to do certain things, because it's, as I'm sure many of you know, it's pretty different from Universal Analytics, the prior version of Google Analytics. So some of what we're going to go through today, it's content that I've kind of pulled from some of the better performing videos on the Root and Branch YouTube channel. And if there are things that you're interested in today that we don't cover, that might be a place, if you're looking for, say, how to set up a specific type of report or specific tracking, could be a place to check out. But what we're going to do today, here is the agenda. Just briefly, we'll talk about what is this digital analytics thing anyway? What is the point? Why are we here? What's the value for us? Or hopefully, what is the value? And then we'll try to level set on Google Analytics 4, looking at some big differences between GA4 and the prior version called Universal Analytics. And then we'll do a high-level tour of GA4, just scrolling around through the platform. Got some screenshots that I took, and we'll just make sure we can navigate. And then we'll talk about what I think is one of the biggest benefits of Google Analytics 4, something called enhanced measurement events, and how we can use them. We'll walk through the process of how you can create a custom report. So any file downloads, that's something that Google Analytics 4 can track by default, and we'll look at how we can create a report for that. But if there's a different event that you might want to track, like say important link clicks, the same kind of process will work for you. Then we'll talk about traffic acquisition in Google Analytics, and we'll do another how to create a custom source medium traffic report. And if we have time, we'll talk about the engaged session metric in GA4. If we don't have time, this deck will still be sent out afterwards, so you'll have these slides at your disposal if you decide to get them. All right, so what's the deal with digital analytics? Well, there's three components of what I would say are useful digital analytics. The first is capturing data. And this is what I think a lot of us do, and kind of we stop there, right? We say, well, we should get Google Analytics set up because we want data. And then that data kind of makes us feel warm and fuzzy. But ultimately, if we're not moving towards analyzing the data, understanding what it's telling us, then just capturing the data is not adding a ton of utility for us. And then ideally, we want to use the data that we have captured and analyzed to improve the performance of real business goals. Now, for a business that's a for-profit business, that typically leads to revenue. For a nonprofit, it might not lead directly to revenue, but it could lead to, it could lead to revenue, or it could lead to another conversion, high-value conversion, like growing an email list or something like that. But analytics helps us answer questions about what is happening on our website. And then we can use the answers to those questions to help us improve performance. And what types of questions? Well, questions like who was on the website? What happened on the website? What pages were viewed? What links were clicked? Where were people scrolling? What files were downloaded? When did it happen? There's a date range selector that you can use in GA4. Where did these people come from? That's where we're talking about traffic acquisition. How did it happen? GA4 has reports called the path exploration report or the funnel analysis, and you can see how your visitors moved through a certain progression. And finally, why did it happen? This is really kind of the holy grail of digital analytics. The why is the hardest part. That can involve hypotheses and then testing those hypotheses. But to get to that point, it relies on having a good deal of confidence about the answers to those other questions. So some of what we'll do today, we'll talk about some of this what happened on the website, and we'll also talk about the where. Where did these people come from? But first, we'll level set with some big differences between the new Google Analytics GA4 and the prior version, Universal. We'll talk about the data model. We'll talk about changes to the account structure. And we'll talk about how reports are handled a little bit differently. Let's start with the data model, which is all based on this idea of something that's called a hit. And this is going to sound really technical for a minute, but just hang with me because it won't be too bad. And a hit is just an interaction that happens on your website that gets recorded and results in data being sent to Google Analytics. So this is what the Google Analytics 4 tracking code looks like. If you're here, you probably have it on your website, right? So then when that code is on your website, things happen. Things like page views and scrolls and clicks, form submissions, those kinds of things. That information gets sent to Google Analytics for processing. And that's what becomes available for you to see in your reports. The way that this happened in Universal Analytics, there were all these different hit types. That data would get sent and packaged in different ways. Google Analytics would put that into reports. In Google Analytics 4, all of that data, as you can see, is sent as events. So an event then, it's simply something that allows you to measure one of those user interactions on your website. and events are the process whereby those hits, those interactions are measured, packaged, and sent to GA4. One of the big implications of this is that Google Analytics 4 has some benefits over Universal Analytics in terms of the type of data that can be collected. In some ways, it does make things a little more confusing for people who are used to Universal Analytics. I would put myself in that category, at least for the first year and a half of trying to learn the tool, but there are also some distinct benefits, which we'll look at. First, let's just take a look at where we can find those GA4 events in our reports. So if you are logged into Google Analytics and you look in your lifecycle reports within engagement, you'll see this events report. It's just a list of all of the events, all of those interactions that took place on your site. So that will be sorted for you by event count. That's the default sorting method, but pro tip, if you can see that little down arrow to the left of event count, if you click that same place on any other column headers, you can sort your data in ascending or descending order, and it'll resort for you. But in this report, we'll see things like things that happen very commonly, right? Page view, session start, first visit, and then things that happen less commonly, things that we see as our visitors start to interact and engage with the site. Clicks on navigation buttons, getting more engaged on the site. Finally, things that are getting closer to a conversion being those events that make revenue or that drive value for our business through our website. Things like a call to action button click. You can see that in that second purple arrow, or a file download, which we'll be talking about today. And then finally here we see form submitted. So this is how, users, they'll move through our website. Another difference between Universal Analytics and GA4 is the account structure is different. So in Universal Analytics, there were 3 levels of the account hierarchy. There was the account level. That's kind of like the entire organization level would be at the account level. The property level. So in the days of Universal Analytics, let's say you had both a website and an app within your organization, both of those would be 2 distinct properties within one account. And finally, there are views, and the views were where we actually accessed our data. You could apply filters at the view level. That's where you set up any of your goals. They had this 3-part setup. This is what Google Analytics 4 looks like. There's only 2 levels of that account hierarchy. So we still have the account level, and then we have this property level that kind of combines what a view was like in Universal Analytics and what a property was like in Universal Analytics. Probably the biggest difference here is for organizations that have both a website and an app, that data can be combined in your same reports, in your same property, using something that's called a data stream. And we'll come back to the idea of a data stream later, but yeah, just these 2 levels of the Google Analytics account hierarchy. And the third difference that we're highlighting here is just the way that reports are treated. There are fewer standard reports in Google Analytics 4, but Google Analytics 4 has the option for creating customized reports, and GA4 also has something that Google calls advanced reporting techniques that are called explorations. So we can get into that using this explore feature. And later in this video, later in this webinar, we're going to look at both of those things. We're going to look at how we can create a custom report and how we can use explorations. This is what Universal Analytics looked like in terms of those standard reports. There were more than 35 out of the box. And this is what GA4 looks like out of the box, with about half as many prior to those customizations. All right, let's do a high-level tour of GA4. For those of you who have already been working in the platform, this is going to be, well, something you already know. We won't spend too much time on this. If you haven't spent much time in GA4, this would be a good time to pay attention. When you log into GA4, here's what the home screen looks like. one of the things you'll get is just this quick snapshot of performance, just a chart of users, conversions, event count over a certain time period. That default time period is 7 days, but if you want to change it, you can hit that drop down arrow there and change, and your report will rebuild. You'll also get this snapshot of what's happening on your site in the last 30 minutes. How many users are on your site? Where are they coming from? And if you click onto that button, you'll see a more enhanced version of what's called the real-time report. With the real-time report, you can see right there, there are all of your users from all over the world, wherever they are, the ones that are on your site right now, or at least have been on the last 30 minutes. Where are they? How did they get there? So that's this right here, source medium. If you have any distinct audiences that you've created, like new users or returning users, you'll be able to see them here. What pages are they viewing currently? And what are they doing? What events are taking place? What are those interactions that are happening? And if you, below that real-time report, there's a whole bunch of reports that we can create. Now, this particular one, we can see they have created a number of custom reports. In this report snapshot, you can see more information about where your users are coming from and where they are. Well, the first one, where they're coming from, based on traffic acquisition. So how many come from organic search versus social media versus email versus referral. Referral being just links from other websites coming to your website. And where are they geographically around the world? And then you can click for more detail into these other standard reports. Right below that, we see GA4 explorations. And we'll walk through an example of how we can use the explorations tool to report on file downloads. File downloads being one of these enhanced measurement events. The big deal with enhanced measurement is that in the days of universal analytics, most of these events were things that you would have needed to use Google Tag Manager to set up. So you would have needed to create an event tag and trigger in Google Tag Manager, and then that data would go into your universal analytics property. But in GA4, you can do it just with a single toggle switch. That includes interactions like external link clicks, embedded video YouTube plays, scrolls, and file downloads, and a few more. Now, where do we see these events in GA4? It's back in that same engagement and events report. Here are a few. This is actually from my data on the Root and Branch Group website. Things like scroll activity, click activity, that's external link clicks, video progress, video start. Those are all things that would have required a custom event in Universal Analytics, but in GA4, single click. And here's how to make sure enhanced measurement is turned on in your property. First, you go to the admin area. That admin area is always going to be in the bottom left of your property. You can see that gear icon there. And then if you look towards the middle of the screen in your property settings, remember we had looked at that account hierarchy, we see data streams. So this is where this new thing that exists in GA4 that didn't exist in Universal Analytics. So click into data streams and then select your data stream. If you're like me, just have one website, don't have an app, don't have multiple websites, you will see one data stream. So click into it again, and then ensure that enhanced measurement is toggled on. It should be turned on by default, but check, because I've seen some properties from clients where they haven't had it turned on. And then you click this gear icon to check the status of individual events to see what you're tracking. The first one there is page view. You can see it's kind of grayed out there, but toggled to the right. So that one is just on by default and you can't turn it off. Scrolls, that will fire at 90% scroll depth. You can see I have that one turned off for my property. That's because I did set up a custom event there that will fire at different scroll depths. Outbound clicks. This is called the click event that will fire on any link clicks that go off your domain. site search. It's called the view search results event. If you have a search function on your website, you can see what your visitors are looking for. That's really great information that might help inform your content strategy or your social media. You can see what people are interested in. Form interactions, that can be tracked by default with the form start and form submit events. Video engagement, this one works only for embedded YouTube videos, but if you have a YouTube video player on your site, you can track plays with this enhanced measurement event. And finally, file download. And that's the one that we're going to look at now to create a report. And here's how to do that. How you can track and report on file downloads with explorations. Let's first show the comparison. Without explorations, you'd be limited back to that event report. So you can see file download, you can see there it happened 149 times. If you click into it, you can see a little bit more information, but you won't be able to see the information you really care about, which is what files were downloaded, right? Not just how often did it happen. This is the detail that you can see with explorations. So you can see your file name, all of those different downloads there, how often they were downloaded, and you can add additional information like this one is a page path. So what specific pages were visitors on the Root and Branch website when they downloaded specific files? That can help me think about like, ooh, what other places might I want to put some of these downloads that are going to be helpful for people? So when we first click into explorations, this is what it looks like before we get started. Just pretty blank, right? But we will walk through how we pick dimensions and metrics to populate our exploration. First, a little more background info about this specific event from Google's support article. This is from, well, you can see the URL in the bottom left there if you want to check it, but I promise that I'm just grabbing screenshots here from Google. This is what Google says about the file download event. That's the name of it, file_download. You'll see event names in GA4, they are lowercase, and for spaces, there's an underscore typically. That's called snake case. So that is the way that event names are treated in GA4. In this particular event, it tracks downloads of any of the following types of files. It tracks it using this long built-in regular expression, which is not information you need to know, but if you're curious, hey, how is Google doing that? That's how. And events have something that are called event parameters. An event parameter is data that adds more context to our event. So in our case, for this file download event, there's a parameter that's called file name, and that shows the specific file that is being downloaded. If we don't have that, we don't have all the information we need. And we're going to want to use that parameter right there, file name. So the file download event, an enhanced measurement event, we're using that. And the file name event parameter, those two things are the two ingredients that we need to create this. So let's do it. Let's build it then. So from the home screen, click down to explore, and you'll see the option to create a blank exploration. So click anywhere in that little plus in that rectangle area to create a blank exploration. And you'll be presented with that blank report we looked at before. And it's our job now to select our dimensions and our metrics. There's metrics, the metrics being the quantifiable values of what we're looking at in our report, and the dimensions being how the data is aggregated, how it is sliced. So dimensions, technically, the technical definition is an attribute of your quantitative data. So things like city, country, continent, week, month, page, session source medium, all of these things are attributes of quantitative data. They are all dimensions. In our case, we want to analyze our data based on the specific files that were downloaded and the specific pages our visitors were on when they downloaded those files. Those are going to be our dimensions. first, what are metrics? So if dimensions are attributes of the quantifiable data, then metrics, they are the quantitative measurements themselves. So things like number of sessions, number of conversions, bounce rate, average engagement time, event count. You see things like number, count, bounce rate, time, things that can be quantified. In our case, we want event count, how often this file download event took place. That is what we are going for. And when we add these things to our report, we're going to use variables and tab settings. These aren't really terms that you need to know. So if you've had enough terms, just turn your brain off for the next 30 seconds. But you can see at the top of those headers of those gray bars there, that's where it says variables and tab settings. So variables are basically the things that we want to have available in our exploration. And then we need to move them over to tab settings so that they are actually being used in the report. Variables there, tab settings there. And there's a plus sign right there that's turning on. That's what we hit to add dimensions and metrics to our variables. So then we can double click on them once they've been added to the variables to move them over into our reports. All right, so there's our report again. And now we know that this event count, that's our metric. That is our quantifiable value. We know that file name, that is one of our dimensions, how that quantifiable data is organized and grouped. It is sliced at the file name level and also at the page path level. Page path being what specific page was a visitor on our website when they downloaded the file. All right, so let's get back to building this thing. Let's now select our metrics. So click that plus sign just to the right of metrics, right there. And we'll be able to search for whatever metric we want. There's a lot. In this case, we just want event count, right? So if we look in that search function, just start typing event count, we will see it available there. And we just hit the checkbox and click import to add that to our variables. So it's available in our exploration. Now we need to select our 3 dimensions, the dimensions being the attributes of the data, the way the data is sliced. So hit that plus sign. And now let's search for event name. Check, import, great. Let's do the same thing again for file name. This is going to pull in that event parameter. Check it, import. I bet you know what we're going to do next, right? Page path and screen class. Oh, this is kind of hopefully not too much of a derailer here. But the reason it's called page path and screen class, that screen class is the name of what a page is in an app. So since GA4 combines both website and app together, that's why it's called page path and screen class. And page path would have been the same name of this dimension in Universal Analytics. It's just everything that comes after the slash in your website domain name. So rootandbranchgroup.com is mine. Everything that comes after that .com slash is the page path. Okay, so search for that, check it, and we'll import that as well. We've now selected our dimensions and metrics for our report, and we can use them for filtering and for the data in our rows and columns in our report. So let's now set up a filter on the event name dimension because we only want to look at the file download event. So you can see down here, we have this filtering option. So click down into that to create a new filter. You'll see 3 options, the 3 options for the dimensions that we had already added to our variables. Click event name. You can see we're now building an event name filter, and we just create the conditions. And we are going to create a filter so that our event name exactly matches file download, because that's the only one we care about here. And then click apply. Now we double click on the remaining 2 dimensions and the other metric that's in our report, and that will add them into our report view. I put here a note, you can also add event name to the report that you want, but there's no reason to, because we know we're only looking at the file download event. So you don't need a column that just says file download, file download, file download, file download, unless you really want that. Now we've done it. You've got your report. You can replicate this for other reports as well. Say if you didn't want to look at the file download event, you could set your filter to one of those different enhanced measurement events. Remember, over to the right, there's our metric, the quantifiable value, and then we have our 2 dimensions. All right, so I hope that was helpful. That took me, I don't know how long, longer than I probably care to admit, to understand how to do all of that stuff in GA4, because it's different for sure than Universal Analytics. You have to do more work, but once you do it, these explorations are saved for you, so you can always just come back to them, and it's pretty easy to duplicate them. So you go through that whole process for your file download report, you can duplicate it, and then just make a couple minor changes to have, say, your external link click report. All right, let's now talk about traffic acquisition. And we're going to talk about this idea of ABC. ABC being a framework for thinking about digital analytics on your website. Acquisition, behavior, and conversion. We think about a funnel, like the progression of a user on your website, a visitor. How do they get to a place where they are converting, where they are turning into a new customer or revenue or a lead? Are visitors converting on your site? For example, we just looked at something that might be a conversion for some specific websites, file downloads. What happens before that? Behavior. What else are visitors doing on your site? And then at the top of that is acquisition. How are visitors arriving there? Because if we understand that, we can see which traffic channels are performing the best, which ones are performing the worst. How can we get more of the good traffic? How can perhaps we fix some of the traffic channels that are not working well? For businesses that invest in digital advertising, say they're spending on Facebook ads or Google ads, this is a good way to understand, are those efforts paying off? Is there return on investment for the dollars you're putting into those paid media channels? So we know this is acquisition. How do visitors come to your website? And that there's lots of different ways that visitors can arrive. Some people maybe come through Facebook. Some people might come through organic Google search. Specifically, companies that are investing in SEO probably do really well here. There's paid ads through Google Ads. There's Bing, smaller portion of the organic search traffic. But the point is, there's lots of different ways that people arrive, and the performance of these channels can be really, really different. These traffic sources, these channels, they can be analyzed at different levels because there's multiple ways to classify traffic. We're going to talk about 3 of them, the 3 biggies: source, medium, and channel. Source is the specific place where the traffic came from. So some examples are Google, Facebook, other websites. If Root and Branch sends a link to your website and you look in your traffic, you will see Root and Branch group as a source showing up there. Medium is the type of traffic. So if source is the specific source, medium is the type. So organic traffic coming from Google or Bing, those are 2 different sources, but both would have the same medium showing up as organic. CPC, cost per click, that's a medium for paid traffic. Referral traffic, that is a medium for links from other websites pointing to yours. And we can combine source and medium to get a detailed, and I think perhaps the most helpful view of looking at our traffic. So Google Analytics categorizes most traffic that comes to your website all on its own, right? It's smart enough to do that based on looking at the source and the medium. So previewed this example, organic traffic that comes to your site from Google, the source will show up as Google, the medium will show up as organic. In the source medium report in the days of universal analytics, that would show up as Google/organic. So you know exactly what it is. If it's Bing, the source would be Bing, medium would be organic, and the traffic would show up as Bing/organic in your source medium traffic acquisition report. Now, I mentioned there's a third level of this traffic acquisition that we're going to look at, and that is channel. Channel is a little bit squishier than source or medium. It's some kind of rule-based definition of your website's traffic. This organic search is an example of a channel. Paid search is an example of a channel. Paid social is an example of a channel. So if we contrast paid search and paid social there, they're two different channels. They would likely both have the same medium, though. They would both be the same medium of CPC. So it really kind of depends on what the purpose of your analysis is based on what traffic acquisition level you would use. There's CPC. CPC could be both Google and Facebook, and it could also be both paid search and paid social. Of course, paid search could also include Google paid search and Bing paid search. Another reason why that source medium view is a really good way to look at it, because that's going to tell you really precisely what you're looking at. Now, GA4 is kind of different because Universal Analytics had a pre-built source medium traffic acquisition report. GA4 does not. When you look at the traffic acquisition report in GA4, it's going to show you the channel level right there. Now you can hit that little blue, hit the little drop down arrow if you squint just to the right of that blue box, and you can change how your traffic is grouped, and you can pick session source medium. So that's going to allow you to see that, yeah, organic search, let me look at that based on Google organic, Bing organic, and ecosia.org, which honestly, I don't even know what Ecosia is, but it's apparently an organic search engine. Viewing traffic at the session source medium level, as I've said, it's often more helpful than the channel level. And if you want to have your own custom report, so you can see that by default, it's just a saved view rather than having to kind of change it and toggle back and forth. You can still keep your channel report, but also create a new one so you can see session source medium traffic as well. Let's now see how to do that. All right, so here's the report. Now, instead of being in the engagement reporting area, we're in the acquisition reporting area, and we can go into the traffic acquisition report. It's going to show us what traffic sources perform best, right? How do we get more of them? How do we work on the poor performers? And as we saw, the channel group level is the default way that traffic is grouped. So there we can see organic search and organic social, good, but not the most detailed. If you change that primary dimension by hitting that drop down and pick session source medium, you can see, okay, it's really Google organic that's driving the organic search traffic for this website. Bing, just almost nothing. DuckDuckGo, even less. And that social traffic we saw is all coming from LinkedIn. Now, if you want to customize the report so you can see that by default, hit the pencil icon that you'll see in the top right of your screen. And you can do this with any of these standard reports in GA4. You can always use this pencil icon to customize. And that is going to allow you to edit your dimensions and metrics. Remember, the same kind of dimensions and metrics that we were looking at before in explorations, we can do them now in the standard reports area. So let's click into dimensions on the right side of the screen, and you should see session source medium available. If you don't, right at the bottom there, you'll see this add dimension. You can click into that and search for it. Once you have it, hit the 3-dot icon that you'll see to the right of session source medium right there, and choose set as default for session source medium. And then blue button in the bottom right, click apply. You've now changed for that specific report the default to source medium instead of the channel level. But if you want this to be a new report and still want to have a channel report, which I'd recommend, when you hit save as a new report instead of save changes to a current report. You'll get to give it a name. You can see I've given this a very creative name called session source medium, and then click save. You have now created the report, and there's one more step where you actually need to add it to what's called your library. Your library is your collection of reports, so it's available for you to see readily. So you'll see a message that says your report's saved in the library. You're like, that's great, but I want to actually check this one out of the library. So we're going to grab the report and add it to your collection. So go back to your standard reports and look for library. You can see it right there down at the bottom of this list. So click that library button. Now you're going to see these collections. Collections are just how your reports are grouped. And here we're not talking about explorations. Explorations is totally in a different area. These are the standard reports that exist within GA4. So find your life cycle reports and click edit collection. And right above that red arrow, you can see these folders there: acquisition, engagement, monetization, and retention. Those are kind of like the 4 folders of standard life cycle reports that GA4 has. Now you can find the report that you just created and bring it on over to your collection. So begin by typing the name of the report you just created. We called ours session source medium. So if you just start typing it right there where it says search reports, you can see that it is available right there, session source medium. So now we grab it and drag it to where we would like it to be. So you can see I have, it's there highlighted in the blue bar. I'm dragging it from the right side of the screen over to the left side of the screen into my acquisition reporting area within my lifecycle reports. And you can reorder any of these reports here as well. If for some reason you wanted one to show up higher than another, you can use the X's. If there's reports there that you just don't use, you can change how these reports are presented. And they're not deleting the reports forever. It's just changing how they're presented to you in your collection. Right there. And then click save. And I saved to the current collection. You can also create a brand new one, but I mean, geez, this is complicated enough for me. I'm just going to manage all of my reports in one single collection. So now you're all done. All right. I wasn't sure, but it looks like we do have time for this last section, at least to get started with it. So this is great. We're going to talk about engaged sessions and bounce rate in GA4. And we're talking about this because engaged sessions, this is a brand new metric, didn't exist in Universal Analytics. And I think it's actually can be really helpful. So what is an engaged session? Broadly, we can think about engaged sessions as our quality traffic, the stuff that's not just like an immediate bounce away, somebody who's just not interested at all. These are visitors who are considering what we have on our website as valuable for them. And we can use the engaged session metric to analyze along dimensions. Remember, there's dimensions again, like our traffic sources and landing pages, to see what traffic sources are performing best, what content on our site is performing best, and which ones are we going to need to work on. So an engaged session is one that hits one of 3 criteria. It either lasts for 10 seconds or more, or it includes 2 or more page views, or it includes at least 1 conversion. If any of those 3 things are hit, it's an engaged session. So let's imagine a website that had 621 engaged sessions and had 1,000 total sessions. Just see how good I am at math right here. Be prepared to be amazed. That is a 62.1% engagement rate. Engagement rate is that new metric in GA4. Engaged sessions are also new in GA4. That didn't have any kind of corollary in Universal Analytics. Engagement rate has a very new definition in GA4 compared to Universal Analytics. In Universal, bounce rate was the percentage of single page sessions. Now it is the inverse of the engagement rate, which is really weird. It's like two totally different things. But still it's called bounce rate. So let's go back to that same example, 1,000 total sessions, 621 engaged, 62.1% engagement rate. The bounce rate in GA4 is 100% minus the engagement rate. So the bounce rate is just the inverse of that, 37.9%. We can see engagement rate in our traffic channel report. So there's sessions right next to engaged sessions. And all the way out to the right, we see engagement rate. So for this website, the overall engagement rate, 75%. This is actually pretty high across the early data. Seems to be that for most websites, the overall average is around 50% engagement rate. Seems like a decent benchmark. So check that out for your property and you can kind of get a sense of where you're stacking up. For this one, we can see that it's really the organic search traffic that's lifting the engagement rate so high. The direct traffic, which would be people who go like, typing the URL in, they're much less impressed than organic search visitors. That engagement rate's only 56%, which maybe means there's a problem with the homepage because likely this direct traffic's coming to the homepage. Maybe that initial above the fold experience on the homepage is lacking some good calls to action. People are bouncing away. So with engagement rate, we can prioritize our acquisition efforts towards getting more of our best traffic. And it can also, we can review our poor performers to see what we can learn and places where we might be able to improve. Yeah, so I think that's actually where I'm gonna wrap this up, but I will, because I know, you know what? No, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going because we've got some time. I'll wrap up at 12:55, so we have a little bit of time for questions, maybe 12:53 or 12:54. But I wanted to show you one more thing that I really didn't think we were gonna get here. Hopefully this is landing because we're covering a ton of ground. I know. But we're going to talk about how we can create some custom events in GA4. So we talked about these enhanced measurement events that we just can turn on with a single click. That's great. But there are also custom events. So here's an example of one particular website that all the different types of events that are being collected. Google has 3 events that are called automatically collected events. These are things that are similar to enhanced measurement, but you can't turn them off even if you wanted to. So those are session start, when a session starts, first visit. If it's a user's first visit, that event will get collected, and user engagement. User engagement, that's what happens when a session turns from just being a regular session to an engaged session. So we've got those. Then we've got a whole bunch of those enhanced measurement events. Then we have custom events. Custom events, some of them you still do need Google Tag Manager to set up, but some of them, like say important page view events, you can create without ever leaving Google Analytics 4. So here's one for a high value page view for a local SEO page view that's getting tracked as its own event. Here's how you can create custom events in GA4. So within that admin panel, so remember admin, bottom left of the screen, hit the gear icon, move on over to events, click that and create event. and then create once again, you'll be able to create a brand new event where first thing you do, you give it a name. So you can see at the top there, custom event name. We called that local SEO page view. If you call this my favorite event, that's what will show up in your report. I had mentioned the idea previously of something called snake case. So you still want to use that naming convention when you create your event. So that's all lowercase letters and underscores for spaces. Event names are case sensitive. So if you created one local SEO page view like this, and then had another one with local SEO page view with a capital L that you created in the future, that would count as two different events. Leads to messy data. Just keep things simple, all lowercase and underscores. Now the trickiest part, I guess, or where the actual creation happens, is where you set these matching conditions. And you can see it says create a custom event when another event matches all the following conditions. So what we're doing here is we're basically picking one type of event that Google is already collecting, modifying it slightly with the condition, and then asking Google to create a new event when those conditions match. So in this situation, the local SEO page view event, that can only take place on one important page. It's when the page location contains this part of the URL, service/local SEO. And the other condition that needs to be met is the parameter of event name needs to be equivalent to page view. So what this is telling GA4 is create a new event called local SEO page view when these two things are true. Somebody's on this page, that's the first condition. This specific location of the page, the service local SEO page, and the page view event is occurring. If we didn't have the second one, this local SEO page view event would be created when users did all sorts of things on that page. Like if they clicked, if they scrolled, if they did other stuff, each time they did that thing, an event, if any event fired when the page location contained that service/local SEO part of the page location, this event would be firing. So we need both of these two things. And then finally, there's a check all the way at the bottom here that says copy the parameters from the source event. That simply means those event parameters, that's additional data that adds context to our event. Whatever was going to be created when the page view event is created, copy that same stuff and send it for our local SEO page view event. And if you do that and then hit save, you have created a custom event. This is really helpful for those of you who might have form submissions that redirect to a thank you page. So you could create a custom event for form submissions here. Of course, we looked at how enhanced measurement could do that as well, but sometimes that one can be a little bit buggy for people. So this is a great way to track those visits to confirmation pages after someone submits a form and gets redirected. All right, it is now 12:53, and I am officially going to wrap up here. So we got through a ton of stuff. I hope it was helpful. Let's do some questions.
Absolutely. We have got a list of questions. I have been keeping track, so I'm just going to run through them. Allison had a question. She asked, what is end_market_page load?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, that was for a custom configuration for a larger business. I don't even know how they did that, honestly. But they were based on how their specific website was set up. They had like multiple domains kind of all working together, and they tried to create their own custom like page view event. Not anything I've ever seen before, and not anything that I've spent much more time thinking about, probably because it's partially over my head. Great question. I wish I had a better answer.
No, I think that's a good one. Allison also wanted to know, does anyone still need Google Tag Manager?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Allison, you probably asked that question before got to one specific slide. I'm going to try to go back to it now though. This one right here. So these are the events, the ones that have this Google Tag Manager icon popping up. These are ones that I'm using to, yeah, I'm using Google Tag Manager to track. One is a timer, a page timer event. That's yeah, that's Google Tag Manager. The scroll one, you wouldn't need that if you just use the 90% default that Google Analytics 4 will track by default for you. But I'm trying to track scrolls at like 25%, 50%, 75%, and 90%. So I can see where people are kind of getting bored or confused in blog posts and leaving. And for that, you need Google Tag Manager as well. And there's some other things that that Google Tag Manager is still needed for, like e-commerce tracking, for example. You need Google Tag Manager for that. Good question.
Fantastic. Wayne wanted to know, he sells online, but he doesn't have a website. Is it possible for him to use an eBay ID with Analytics 4?
Wayne, if that is possible, I don't know how to do that. I'm gonna make myself a note though to look into that, because maybe I'm gonna learn something new today. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that though right now.
That is quite all right. We had another question. When they were converting to GA4, they followed the steps to set up correctly, but they don't see their previous data from over the past few years. Any ideas on what could have happened there?
Oh, right. Yeah. So I think if I understand the question correctly, this is one of the things that Google did a pretty poor job of explaining about GA4. So even though Google says, hey, here's how you convert to Google Analytics 4, that doesn't mean your old Universal Analytics carries into your new GA4 property. You'll still have access to your old Universal Analytics property. And that you'll continue to have access to that until I think it's the end of next June. So until July of 2024. But you won't have GA4 data until the moment you actually start collecting GA4 data. And that gets back to how that data model is a little bit different. Simply those Universal Analytics, those hits, they don't convert into the GA4 data model. So they just live in two separate places. If that's not the question you're asking, let me know and I'll try to answer again.
Perfect. We have a question. This is a little bit more focused. Maya has a website that's built on Wix and has analytics enabled. She can see a number of those reports in Wix, but the analytics page is actually showing no data. Any thoughts on why that could be happening?
So I guess I would say two things. The built-in analytics typically for like a website builder like Wix, it's going to show you analytics that are from Wix, not like Google's version of analytics. So if you are not seeing data when you look in your Google Analytics account, it's likely because either the code's not like tracking properly or there's something wrong with the Wix integration. My sister actually has a Wix website, and I had previously set up Google Analytics there. So I can, well, if you're interested, just find me on LinkedIn and I'd made like a video of like documenting that process. So I could send you that just to make sure when you set up GA4 that that's exactly the process that you followed.
Amazing. That's fantastic. And we just have one more question. Howard had a question. He wanted to know just some clarity on the relevance of GA4 when other websites and hosting platforms already have an analytics tab. Is GA4 supreme in comparison to these individual data services?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it depends on what you're going to use it for. Google Analytics 4 has a greater degree of functionality than almost anything else that's out there. So for businesses that are investing in, say, digital media and really need to understand performance at the channel level, understand content performance, maybe have someone who is either a full-time data analyst or, let's say, have at least a couple hours a month to dedicate to like digging through the data. Yes, GA4 is better, but for businesses that simply that's not the same kind of priority. They just kind of want to understand, hey, what's happening at a high level? How much traffic am I getting? Maybe, if it's an e-commerce site, even how much revenue am I getting from my site? Wix and other like built-in analytics tools for website builders will tell you that, and it might not be worth going through the process of getting everything set up with GA4. That's a really good and practical question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we are right on the dot at 1 p.m. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic session. I posted in the chat a link to our survey. We value your feedback and we use it to improve our events in the future. And it is also a requirement of our funder, the Small Business Administration, so that we can continue to offer those no-cost workshops and webinars like the one that you attended today. So please take a moment. I promise it's literally 4 questions, super quick. I want to thank Zach for your expertise and for joining us. And I want to thank everyone for joining us on your lunch break here today. Remember that you can register for no-cost consulting to get more individualized small business assistance. And you can also register for any of our upcoming webinars. We'd love to see you at any of our upcoming events in the future. So I want to, again, thank you, Zach, for your time. Great presentation, and I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you.